Hazbin Hotel.
I can suck your dick.
Why would you make a video about Hazbin Hotel? Hi, I'm Bluesue, and hey, let's talk about Hazbin Hotel. So for those who don't know, Hazbin Hotel is an Amazon animated show that started off with an independently made pilot in 2019 before being officially released as a full series in 2024. The show follows the main character Charlie, the princess of hell, with the goal of rehabilitating sinners in a happy hotel so that they can go to heaven and avoid yearly exterminations. The story progresses over 8 23-minute episodes and features Charlie and her girlfriend Vaggie trying to keep the hotel afloat and helping their residents, whilst also having to deal with the evil forces of hell and sometimes even heaven. It's mainly beloved amongst the people who watch it for its unique character designs, interesting premise, catchy songs, and likable characters. And the fact that it started off as an independently made pilot is a genuinely incredible feat. It was one of the first of its kind to reach the levels of popularity and success that it has, and almost anyone would agree that the fact that the show exists is incredible, and I'm sorry, I kinda don't like it. Now listen, if you've been in the indie animation space at all on YouTube, you'll know that Hazbin Hotel has been talked about before. At length, it's been talked about before. Its character designs and writing and art style and controversy after controversy has been professionally dissected and reanimated by the best science guys we've got. But listen, I've got my own reasons for making this video, alright? And it mostly has to do with Hazbin Hotel's commentary on morality. Because at the core of Hazbin Hotel is one thing, one solitary question that begs to be answered. Can anyone be redeemed? Charlie's entire goal hinges on the idea that anyone can be redeemed if they just try hard enough, and the conflict of the show revolves around her trying to convince everyone that she's right. And ding ding ding, looks like we've got a narrative theme here. And listen to me when I say this show has the perfect setup to explore this theme. The premise of trying to rehabilitate the worst sinners of hell and exploring the theme of redemption through that premise, mwah! Perfection, both fun and an interesting topic to explore. Take all the $2.96 in my bank account. But the way in which Hazbin Hotel explores its morality is, it's something to discuss. So I'm gonna be doing my best to discuss it. First off, I'm going to try to break down what Hazbin Hotel's actual goal was with its theme of morality. And then I'll break down how the way the theme of redemption was executed it has things to be desired. So let's get into it, because I want to talk about Hazbin Hotel and morality. When taking a look at what Hazbin Hotel's thoughts on morality actually are, we can spot a pretty clear message here. That being, 1, that anyone can change for better or for worse, and that we should recognize the good and bad in everyone, and 2, that people can change for the better when they have a solid support system to help them. Basically a power of friendship type deal. Both of these ideas are prominent in almost every episode of the series, with an easy example for message 1 being in episode 1, Overture. The plot of episode 1 has to do with Charlie setting up a meeting with Heaven, where she can try to convince them that the hotel could work and that sinners could be redeemed. Message 1 is present when Charlie speaks to Adam, first man and head of angelic exterminations, about how sinners are real souls that should be given the chance to redeem themselves.
Sinners made mistakes, sure, but everyone makes mistakes.
The idea that anyone can change and that everyone is fallible to human error is contrasted with the ideology of Adam and his henchwoman Lute, who think that angels are superior because they believe that people in heaven can never change for the worse, and vice versa for the people in hell. And boom, message 1 established. Charlie thinks anyone can change and Adam and Lute don't. As for message 2, the best and most clear example of this idea being promoted in the show is in episode 4, Masquerade. Here, Angel Dust, one of the sinners staying at the hotel, is faced with rampant abuse from his boss Valentino, and because of it, his mental health as well as the way he treats the people around him start to get worse. However, the show resolves the episode by having Angel Dust sing the song Loser Baby with the hotel bartender Husk, which is ultimately a song about things getting better when you have people around that can understand and support you. I could bring up more examples of both of these ideas in the show, with Charlie confronting Heaven about how sinners should be able to get into heaven if they get better, and angels should fall if they get worse, and the season finale of the show being about fighting Heaven with the support group Charlie has created for everyone. But hopefully I won't have to, because that'll take too long and you can just take my word for it. Don't you worry, my sweet child, you can trust me. Mwah. But Sue, if Hazbin Hotel is promoting the idea that anyone can be redeemed, doesn't that mean that the show must have a baseline for its own morality? For your idea of redemption is based on your conceptions of good and bad, and therefore if you are promoting redemption, you must first know what you believe a person should aspire to morally. When the f*** did you learn about this? But yeah, if you're a show promoting redemption, it's useful for us as the viewers to establish what your morals are and what you mean when you say a sinner should redeem themselves. The first thing we can glean about Hazbin Hotel's morals is that it claims to not actually know what they are. In episode 6, Welcome to Heaven, it's revealed that Heaven doesn't actually know the criteria to become an angel and therefore what it takes to be a good person. And in the season finale, Charlie says,
"Whatever redemption really means, I know you all tried.
Going off of this, what it seems to me Hazbin Hotel is saying is that establishing consistent morals is incredibly difficult and complicated and might be subjective, which is a fair point. But in spite of this, Charlie is still advocating for redeeming sinners. She's not telling the Hazbin Hotel to wallow in the soup of moral subjectivity. She's still trying to set a baseline for what is good and bad, and therefore it must be possible to find out what morals Hazbin Hotel is promoting. One way we can try and figure out what Hazbin Hotel's morals are is by looking at how the sinners of the hotel change over the course of their arcs. The most important and prominent sinner in the hotel is Angel Dust, who's generally kind of an asshole who oversteps people's boundaries and makes them uncomfortable. So we have our first moral in the Hazbin Hotel commandments. Don't treat people badly for no reason or overstep their personal boundaries. But this is baby stuff. I know I'm not supposed to call my friend's vagina and throw glass at them. My friends have all been glass-free for weeks. What's some other stuff we can extrapolate from Angel Dust's arc? Well, going back to episode 6, the B-plot of the episode is Angel Dust going to a bar and being confronted with the idea of losing progress, with Husk being the angel on his shoulder and his old friend Cherry Bomb being the devil. What is this progress, you may ask? Well, it's substances. Angel Dust is being tested on his temptation towards alcohol and drugs. It's basically an anti-drug PSA.
And if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die.
But with this scenario being used by Charlie to prove to Heaven whether or not Angel Dust has become a better person, it is implied that taking these substances would be a moral failing of some kind. We'll get to the implications of those kinds of morals later, but for now let's just add it to the list. Another way we can extrapolate morals from Hazbin Hotel is by looking at the characters that Hazbin Hotel deems as morally good, namely Charlie. Don't get me wrong, Charlie is depicted as a relatively flawed character who needs growth, but in terms of morality, she's generally regarded as the best character in the show. In comparison to the rest of the sinners who all have some sort of asshole moment, Angel Dust pushing himself on Husk, Husk yelling at Angel Dust in episode 4, Penchas wrecking the hotel, Alistair's everything. Charlie doesn't really have one. Most of the bad things she does, like getting Angel Dust in trouble with Valentino or psyching Heaven to fight Hell, are so obviously unintentional that it's hard to say that she was morally wrong when it happened. And her being kind of distant from Vaggie in episode 7 is treated less like she's in the wrong, and more so that she just needs time to process the Vaggie plot reveal. But because of this, the things she thinks are good can be interpreted as what the show thinks is good. So what's some of the things she sees as good?
I'm off to not have sexual intercourse before marriage! Yes! Oh!
Okay. Alright, obviously this clip is a joke, but looking at the show as a whole, there does seem to be at least unconscious advocation of sexual purity. The way that Charlie and Vaggie, who are the most consistently portrayed as morally in the right, tend to be disgusted by acts of lewdness, the way that their relationship, compared to the relationships between sinners, is comparatively less lewd, with the most sexual thing done on screen being their kiss in the season finale. It's not an insignificant thing to bring up. Again, we'll get to the implications of this type of morality later, but for now let's add another one to the list. Some other things that Hazbin Hotel portrays as bad is the enslavement that overlords exercise on sinners, sexual exploitation, the genocide the angels inflict on sinners, misogyny, and homophobia. And look at that, what a list of stuff. Take a gander at it. Okay, gandering time over. Some of these things might seem pretty obvious, but it's still good to note this down so that we know what Hazbin Hotel means when it talks about morality. So, here we are. We've got 2 messages Hazbin Hotel is promoting in regards to morality, that being that anyone can change and that friendship is magic, and we have a list of morals that we've been able to take away from what the show gives us. Seems pretty solid, right? Now, what if I told you? What if I told you that it's all bullshit? It's bullshit! I've been bullshitting you this whole time! It's all bullshit! Hazbin Hotel has so many issues, you guys! We need to talk about this! Okay. So I've got a couple issues with Hazbin Hotel's exploration of redemption. Alright, time to whip out the thesis. Hazbin Hotel wastes the potential of its premise and its execution of its main theme of redemption by not aptly challenging Charlie's core philosophy enough. The idea that anyone can be redeemed is one that seems cool on paper, but could have been shown off better if it was challenged properly by Hazbin Hotel's narrative. Let's start with how the show defines its morality. First off, as I said before, the concept of redemption is one that requires a strong definition of morality beforehand. How can you redeem someone if you don't even know how you want them to change? Knowing what Charlie actually means when she talks about redemption will allow the show to come up with counter-arguments that can properly challenge her ideology. And hey, remember when we spent a full script page establishing the Hazbin Hotel 12 Commandments? Well, if you did, then you are stupid, because the show itself sure didn't remember. A lot of the things that Hazbin Hotel deems as good or bad are contradicted later on by the show itself. Take morals number 2 and number 6. Respect people's boundaries and don't sexually exploit people. Pretty good morals if I do say so myself. Angel Dust is criticized by pushing himself on Husk in episode 4, and the character of Valentino as a whole is meant to be a critique of sexual exploitation. However, in episode 6, we get a joke where Penchas is dragged into a room and is implied to have been sexually assaulted, and it's barely mentioned mentioned afterwards, essentially being treated as a one-off gag. And putting how gross this joke is aside, it's very hypocritical and muddies the morals that the show has set up prior. You can say it's just a joke, but jokes aren't just things that exist outside of any context. And listen, it's not like these demons are meant to be depicted in a benevolent light or anything, but making light of something like this makes the show's previous commentary on the subject feel a lot more disingenuous. Now on a lighter note, let's talk about the ownership of souls in hell. Remember that time when I told you guys not to enslave people? Hi, I'm Bluesu, and I think slavery is bad. You guys didn't do anything like that whilst I wasn't looking, right? Carmilla! Okay, so for those who don't know, in Hazbin Hotel there's a powerful group of sinners called overlords, whose main service is in owning souls. Alistair is one such overlord who owns Husk's soul, and we get to see the negative consequences this has on him. The fact that Alistair owns Husk's soul is seen as an undeniably bad thing, and is considered a threat to Charlie when she decides to strike a deal with Alistair later in the season. So tell me why, in Satan's overwhelmingly red hell, is Carmilla depicted as a good guy? In Hazbin Hotel, Carmilla Carmine is an overlord who specializes in selling weapons, and yes, while she is depicted as morally ambiguous, she's supposed to be mostly sympathetic. And the fact that she presumably owns souls is never directly addressed. In fact, it's not really addressed with a lot of the overlords. And this line in particular kind of confuses me.
Together you own millions of souls. Souls at risk with the new extermination schedule.
And the reason why it confuses me is because it implies that the ownership of souls can somehow be benevolent, as Carmilla implies that it is an overlord's duty to protect them. And listen, you can tell me, well, Hazbin Hotel never explicitly condemns the ownership of souls in its entirety, but before you do, I want you to do me a really big favor and shut up, because what do you mean Hazbin Hotel isn't explicitly condemning the enslavement of souls? I mean, okay, maybe when the show says ownership of souls, it can mean anything from direct ownership to Rosie being what I'm assuming is just the mayor of an entire town of cannibals, but there isn't really a clear distinction drawn between the two within the show, and it speaks to my point, that being the morality of this world doesn't seem to be very well thought out or defined. I don't know where I am, or what's happening, or who these people are, and I'm scared. And just on a side tangent, some of the other values Hazbin Hotel holds are surprisingly conservative for a show that prides itself on being progressive. The fact that Angel Dust being a drug addict is implied to be some sort of moral failing is deeply troubling, as well as what seems to be at least the unconscious promotion of sexual purity as a virtue. And listen, I get it. I was also an asexual with an all sex is inherently gross phase, and there's nothing wrong with being personally repulsed by it. But queerness has always been about the freedom to express yourself, and I feel like Hazbin Hotel, being a show that wants to properly represent queer people, should know better. I do want to say that I don't think any of this was intentionally put in by the creators. Something like how drugs were depicted here just seems to be an unintended consequence of the Hazbin Hotel being both a place for sinners to become morally better and also a rehab. But the consequences of not thinking about how certain things might come across is that the audience might absorb the wrong ideas. Now, I want to be clear here. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have hypocritical morality in your show. We're all human here. We all do things that might not align with the things we actually believe in our little monkey brains. I'm just saying that having moral hypocrisy in your show needs to be a conscious choice, a topic that is explicitly discussed. So, how do we fix it? How do we give Charlie a proper definition of morality that allows us to figure out what she means when she says that she wants to redeem people, and therefore allow the show to properly counter her ideas? Well, let me give you guys a quick lesson in ethics. Stay with me now. In normative ethics, there are two main branches, deontology and consequentialism. There's also virtue ethics, but that one's kind of complicated, so we're not touching it. Aristotle can go to hell. Deontology is a branch of ethics that believes that there are certain duties that humans hold that should follow universal and objective moral laws. Basically, that there are some things that you should or shouldn't do regardless of circumstances or consequences. Example, Immanuel Kant, who's probably the most famous deontologist, believed that lying was always wrong, even if you were doing it to protect a friend from being murdered. On the other hand, consequentialism is about the belief that the basis of whether an action is right or wrong is based on the consequences of that act. Utilitarianism, which is classified under consequentialism, believes that maximizing utility, that being the overall happiness an action gives to people, should be the goal of any moral action. J.S. Mill, a famous utilitarian, would believe that lying to protect a friend from being murdered is actually pretty cool, because the consequences of that action result in the preferable outcome of your friend not dying. Obviously, these two ideologies are a lot more complex than what I'm explaining, but shh, we don't have to worry about that now. Do your own research if you're interested. What's the point of explaining all this? Well, establishing what branch of ethics Charlie subscribes to would be super useful in defining what she means by redemption. If she was a utilitarian, she might believe that redemption is when a person is able to do so much good that the person's existence would be a net positive to the world rather than a net negative. And if she was a deontologist, then her idea of redemption would align more with something like the good place, where a person becomes better by acknowledging past wrongs and committing to certain moral principles. Charlie seems like she would probably be some kind of deontologist, but again, that's something that's gotta be acknowledged by the show in some way in order to properly challenge any of her deontological views. I'm not saying that Hazbin Hotel's gotta point to the screen and say, hey, Charlie subscribes to the normative ethics branch of deontology and reads Kant every night before she goes to bed, but that there needs to be some level of intention into defining what Charlie's ideology is that I don't think exists. Lastly, another thing I feel the show misses out on is actually discussing its own morals and how morality can actually be defined in the real world. One of the big plot twists in episode 6 is that heaven doesn't have a grasp on its own morals and that morality is a complicated thing to define. But it doesn't have any episodes discussing that, what could be right and what could be wrong, how culture and time periods could affect morality, whether or not morality is truly objective and universal or solely based on the present society and culture, and how people in power tend to be the ones who define what is moral and what isn't. Even if Hazbin Hotel did properly establish what Charlie means when she talks about redemption, it doesn't necessarily mean that her view on redemption is right, and the show should be taking the time to give her an ideology so that it can be properly dissected. But how? How could we hypothetically challenge Charlie on her ideas in the show? What would be the best way? Well, let's talk about plot structure. So, with plot structure, it's generally seen as a good idea to make the plot of an episode one that can properly challenge a character and their ideas. A good example of this is Double Dipper in Gravity Falls, where Dipper learns not to get in his own way when trying to talk to his crush Wendy by having to deal with clones of himself who are literally getting in his own way. It's a fun plot that effectively allows Dipper to face his flaws and overcome them. Cool. With Hazbin Hotel, though, let's go over episode 2. In episode 2, Radio Killed the Video Star, Sir Pentious, a sinner with a sentient snake hat, shows up at the hotel asking to be redeemed. The inclusion of Pentious at the hotel starts to affect Angel Dust, with Pentious seemingly being a lot more enthusiastic about improving than he is, and Charlie taking notice.
It's just nice to have someone interested for once.
And because of this, Angel Dust starts getting jealous of Pentious and becoming insecure over his ability to get better. And this is an A+ setup for exploring Angel Dust's character and discussing what it takes for a person to actually change. From what we know from the show, Pentious is under a lot less stress than Angel Dust, which might make it easier for him to better himself. And whilst you can say that Pentious is making more of an effort than Angel Dust is, do we really choose how much motivation we have to become better people? Or is that something outside of our control and oh, the episode's over already? Okay. That was pretty quick. I wonder why. Welcome home. I'm gonna make you wish that you stayed gone. Alright, that's enough of that. So, something I failed to mention beforehand. This plot with Pentious, it starts halfway through the episode. What was going on in the first half? Well, what if I told you that Pentious was secretly working for a trio of sinners called the V's, and one of them has a grudge against Alistair, and they have this whole TV and radio thing, and they duet about it, and I'm sorry, man, what does this have to do with anything? Don't get me wrong, I love Stayed Gone. It's catchy and the visuals are super fun, but this doesn't have anything to do with exploring morality or redemption, and is taking time away from potential character and theme building. Listen, I'm not against having fun. I am the biggest fun advocate the world has ever seen. But if you're a show with 8 episodes per season, then you gotta make sure that that fun is thematically relevant. And this is an issue with most of the Hazbin Hotel episodes. Most of them are made up of a bunch of shenanigans that, whilst fun, is wasting time that could have been spent discussing the show's central theme and properly challenging Charlie's ideas. So how could we make it better? To begin with, let's explain serialized versus episodic plot structure in TV shows. Serialized TV is about having a strong overarching plot where one episode's plot flows into the other. Your Infinity Trains and Invincibles. Whilst episodic TV is more about having self-contained plots every episode with less of an emphasis on overarching narratives. Your Smiling Friends and Communities. Now, obviously this is a spectrum. Your show can be episodic but still have an overarching narrative, and the structure of a show can change over time, becoming more episodic or more serialized in later seasons. Now, in fandom spaces, there tends to be a lot of animosity for filler episodes, where nothing important to the overarching plot occurs, with more value being placed on serialized stories rather than episodic ones. But I feel like this is an underestimation of the sheer power of episodic TV, because if you really want to explore a multi multifaceted and complex subject like morality, for example, having an episodic structure would be super useful, since it would allow you to explore a different aspect of this subject each episode. You can have one episode exploring when murder is justifiable, another one about what justice should be based on. Is there a point where a person is irredeemable? Am I morally objectionable if I eat my children? And again, it leaves you open to having an episode about discussing what morality even is and what we mean when we say a person is redeemed. And hey, remember when I talked about how one of Hazbin Hotel's main themes was about how friendship makes people better? An episodic format would do wonders for it, since it could allow each episode to focus on 2 or more characters and their relationships. This could allow the show to really zero in on its cast and make this message stronger, because as is, the cast still doesn't really feel like a full unit. Literally tell me one significant thing about the dynamic between Husk and Charlie and how they feel about each other besides daddy issues. And that's why I feel like Hazbin Hotel would have done a lot better if it chose to go down a more episodic route. It doesn't mean that the show can't have some sort of overarching narrative, but I don't know, maybe it can take a back seat. There's just so much potential in going for a Sinner of the Week approach. I mean, think about it. Like, what if a sinner entered the hotel and his name was Bleep Blore, and he was a rampant misogynist, and the hotel has to decide how they could redeem a person like this, and whether or not it's even worth doing, or something, I don't know. I'm just saying that having a structure where a diverse set of sinners could come to the hotel with the cast trying to figure out the best ways to try and redeem them would be super cool. And it's a shame that that wasn't the direction Hazbin Hotel decided to go in, because the current serialized plot structure it has now isn't lending itself well to exploring its own theme or setting up conflict that could properly challenge the idea that anyone could be redeemed. And speaking of conflict, alright, let's talk about Hazbin Hotel's antagonists. Antagonists are defined by the way they create conflict in the story, and in a story that would want to properly challenge the idea that anyone could be redeemed, you would want them to hold legitimate arguments against the idea to maximize intrigue. Lucky for Hazbin Hotel, the idea of anyone being able to be redeemed is one that is both sympathetic whilst also spurring a bunch of practical questions that could challenge the idea in interesting ways, making it the perfect ideology for your protagonist to hold. Unluckily, these are the antagonists we have to deal with. Let's start with Adam. Going back to Charlie and Adam's argument in episode 1, Charlie says that anyone can change and Adam and Lute don't believe her. But let's actually take a look at the words that are being said here. Charlie says that everyone makes mistakes, and just because a person has made mistakes in the past doesn't mean that they couldn't become better in the future. She's laid down her first argument. What do Adam and Lute have to say to that?
Angels don't make mistakes.
Alright, bro. Adam and Lute in this conversation are intentionally made out to be completely unserious and unreasonable. Charlie brought up a potentially interesting idea here, and the best these characters could come up with is nuh-uh. These characters are meant to be completely irredeemable and borderline stupid. Hell, Adam is consistently portrayed as a huge misogynist. But the problem with depicting these characters in this way is that it doesn't leave room for any valid critiques of Charlie's ideas. Remember when I was talking about how Charlie's idea of redemption had to be properly based in a solid moral framework? I really hope so. I spent a long time writing that section. But anyway, this is why. If Charlie doesn't have this basis, then an antagonist like Adam isn't able to properly challenge her ideas in any meaningful way. For example, if Charlie's redemption was based on utilitarianism, then Adam could argue that there are too many people who won't change, and therefore heaven would be expending its resources on people who might have the potential to change, but just won't. And then Charlie has to convince Adam that investing resources in redemption is worth it and increases overall utility. And if Charlie was a deontologist, then Adam's counter could be something along the lines of, when a person commits certain immoral actions, then they are morally corrupted beyond redemption. And then Charlie would have to rebut that by trying to redeem a person that Adam deems as too morally corrupted to change. But if you don't have a solid grasp on Charlie's ideology, then a sound argument against it won't be able to form. Now, do you think that the idea that some people are too morally reprehensible to realistically redeem is valid? No? Well, Hazbin Hotel sure seems to think it is, because that's the way it treats the V's. The V's as an antagonistic trio are meant to be fully evil and irredeemable. And hold on a sec, isn't this entire show's premise based on the idea that anyone could be redeemed? Why do you have a trio of characters that are depicted as irredeemable in the show where everyone is supposed to be redeemable and not talking about it? I mean, okay, maybe in season 2 it'll address how the very existence of the V's is a direct threat to the show's central ideas. But even if that happens, I still find it strange that the way Hazbin Hotel treats these characters in season 1 is through this light. And I know why. The idea of a character like Valentino being redeemable is uncomfortable and feels wrong. And hey, just for the record, I am not saying that any of these characters should actually get full-on redemption arcs. In fact, I think that would be a really bad idea. But if the show completely dismisses the idea, then it's saying that Adam and the angels were right. That there are some people who will never change and can't be helped. That the idea that anyone can be redeemed is wrong. And maybe it is wrong, or maybe it's not. I don't know, but we gotta have an episode talking about this. Lock Charlie and the V's in a room together. Knock them against the walls. See what happens. Explore the ideas that have been set up in the story. And speaking of not exploring ideas set up in the story, Vaggie. Now, Vaggie isn't an antagonist. She's Charlie's supportive and loyal girlfriend, and she's supportive and loyal and stuff. But I do want to talk about her, just whilst we're already discussing the idea of redeeming terrible people, because I really feel like the show missed out on a lot of potential interesting stuff by having the fact that Vaggie participated in a genocide be resolved in one episode. The fact that Vaggie used to be an angel exterminator is actually a really good twist because it acts as a challenge to Charlie's philosophy from the person who's closest to her. But Charlie isn't even mad about the genocide thing. She's just mad that her girlfriend lied? Aren't these your people? This should be a really challenging moment for Charlie, but the show just kind of glosses over how huge of a reveal this is. And if Charlie was in a position where she needed to redeem people that she finds morally reprehensible, then that's a perfect grounds to tackle themes of justice and how it should be defined. If Charlie believes in a universal objective moral framework, then it would only take abiding by all the values Charlie has set up for a sinner to be properly redeemed. But is redemption just about how much an individual has personally improved? Or is it about the damage someone has done to others and how their victims feel about them? Should a person be considered redeemed if they're abiding by a morally acceptable value system, or if the people they've hurt have forgiven them or not? If we believe the former, then what are the values a sinner must aspire towards? And if we believe the latter, then isn't that too inconsistent? Does that mean that a serial killer could be redeemed by the victim's loved ones whilst my neighbor is still irredeemable because I haven't forgiven them for driving donuts in my backyard? These are all super interesting questions to explore, but we're just not getting it. And it's not like this is unexplored territory for adult animation. BoJack Horseman is a show that did a great job exploring if a person who's done morally reprehensible things is worthy of redemption. How just because you're sorry about something doesn't mean a person will forgive you. How your actions may continue to affect people long after you've grown as a person. But Hazbin Hotel doesn't do this. It doesn't do any of this. For a show that seems to want to be adult and mature so badly, why is it avoiding talking about and exploring adult subjects? I just don't understand. Why is this show so allergic to making its characters and plot conflicts more complex and interesting? Why is Hazbin Hotel like this? Alright, Sue, we get it. You don't like Hazbin Hotel. So does everyone else on YouTube. Why are you making a Hazbin Hotel video? What's the point if everyone and their mother and their mother's 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 mother has already talked about all this? So what if you don't like this show? That doesn't necessarily warrant a half-hour takedown of everything this show holds dear. Me. I hate Hazbin Hotel. I don't like Alistair's haircut and how we can see his bald spot. Me. What's your grudge on Hazbin Hotel anyway? Why do you hate Hazbin Hotel? I loved Hazbin Hotel, okay? I loved Hazbin Hotel. I was their biggest fan. It was me, okay? Me! I thought Alistair was the coolest character alive, and I shipped all the canon couples. I loved Hazbin Hotel. Damn, okay. What happened? I'll tell you. Yeah, I was a Hazbin Hotel fan. Way back in the day when the pilot first released in 2019, 13-year-old me was glued to my phone, and I loved it. I thought the characters were all so cool and the world drew me in completely. I laughed at all the jokes, including the fandom memes. You see this? I saw this exact meme back in 2019, and I thought it was the funniest shit in the world. I made fan art of these characters, all on paper because I didn't know how to use online softwares yet. You see this? I was drawing these characters in vines. That's how you know you're deep in a fandom. And I really looked up to Vivzie Pop. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world that she was able to make something like this with just a ragtag group of talented artists. Hazbin Hotel got me interested in following storyboard artists and animators online. It got me interested in indie animation as a whole, and because of that probably influenced a lot of my political views. There is a very real chance that if Hazbin Hotel didn't exist, I wouldn't have been as much into the indie animation sphere, and I wouldn't have even seen Digital Circus. This YouTube channel might not have existed if not for Hazbin Hotel, and because of that, I owe a lot to this show. It's become an undeniable part of who I am. I grew up with it, but I realize now that it didn't grow up with me. Hazbin Hotel is in a strange purgatory where it simultaneously wants to be taken seriously as an adult show that tackles important subjects, whilst also not willing to properly engage with them. And the messages it does end up presenting are either super underdeveloped or not challenged enough to be interesting. And who knows, maybe that's not what Hazbin Hotel is going for. Maybe Hazbin Hotel just wants to be a fun show about demons singing in hell marketed towards teenagers. But for me personally, I'm disappointed, because Hazbin Hotel was one of the first adult shows I was exposed to, and I wanted it to grow up with me. I wanted it to be good. I wanted it to fulfill that promise of being mature that was given to me back when I was 13, especially on a topic that means a lot to me. But it hasn't. It's not. Instead, I got it from shows like BoJack Horseman, The Midnight Gospel, video games like Disco Elysium and Night in the Woods. And after experiencing what actual adult media had to offer me, Hazbin Hotel is pretty lacking. It doesn't have anything to offer me anymore. And listen, if you like Hazbin Hotel, that's totally fine. I didn't make this video just to dunk on people who like it, and you're not stupid for enjoying it. I would be lying if I said there weren't any incredibly creative and talented people who work on this show. There's a lot to enjoy, and the last thing I want to do is take that away from people. But for me, I think I'm done with Hazbin Hotel. I'll watch the coming seasons and who knows, maybe it'll get better in my eyes. But I'm not looking to Hazbin Hotel to learn more about what it means to be good or be redeemed anymore. I'm not looking to Hazbin Hotel to learn how to be an adult anymore. I need to grow up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to blur my face. Well, or we could just not show it in the... for the song to work.
Guys, don't film it yet. It's not even.
But it's okay.
It's not even started.
Okay, awesome. Do you think that's good?
Yeah, I can see the nifty.
Okay, awesome. Whatever. Okay, goodbye. Do you have anything you want to say to Nifty?
No.
I love you. Okay. Goodbye! Goodbye! Oh my god! Look at it! Whoa! Oh, it's gone.
They got atomized.
They got atomized! That's crazy. Is this representative of hell?
Yes.
Yeah, basically. We still need I think we need a couple more seconds. Unless you want to do something funny. Alright. Goodbye, Nifty. Okay, blow on. Alright, I think it's unrecognizable now. Oh, this is upside down. You want me to get up and close and personal with Nifty, huh? No, shut up. Do you guys have anything you want to say about Hazbin Hotel for the video?
I think it's awesome, man. It's my
think
favorite
it's
show
awesome,
in the
man?
world. I think it has an excellent depiction of morality and the idea of religion and judgment.
Oh hell yeah,
I
dude.
hope your video isn't critical of it.
If it's critical, I think I'm gonna
offended.
actually kill him.
You what?
Me personally, I feel like we should all stop pretending like we all don't all really like Hazbin Hotel.
I
We
agree
should
with
all
that,
stop
actually.
pretending. And I think we should all watch Fuzz Battle. That's what I'm